It's been raining the last 2 days, so no allotment unfortunately. But I have been trying out something new, canning, also called bottling. While I try something new, I like to keep the costs as low as possible in case I don't want to do it again. So while I am canning, nervously, it's about my third go, I'll give you some ways to keep your new hobbies costs down. Number one, the fruit. Happens to be apples. These are Bramley apples that we grew at the allotment, so technically are free. Other possibilities are when you're walking about, look for boxes of help yourself fruit. Some people have fruit trees that they harvest but don't need it all and leave it out front for people to take. But always check the note, as some people use an honesty box for donations and others state free. Others post on local Facebook pages, then you're into costs with farmers markets and so on. Number two, general equipment. Try to use what you already have, saucepans, bowls, cloths and towels. What I like about the early stages of canning is it is just normal food prep, washing, chopping and so on, familiar techniques and familiar tools that are so comforting to a new canner. So I am just chopping up my apples to remove any bad bits and make the surface area bigger so they cook down quicker. Some have codling moths, others are fine. I'm also weighing them out for each batch of chopping, which I will add together later so I can work out the recipe's amount of lemon juice needed. And number three, recipes. The internet is an okay place to start. In YouTube you can get lots of good ideas. You can read blogs, but if you're nervous, you could actually try the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning. It's a free PDF that you can search for on the internet. I got a book as a gift. It was a paperback, about £16-ish, Balls Canning. I am also a member of a canning Facebook group, great for specific questions, but beware, you might get a variety of answers. So after weighing out the apples, I'm going to cook them. So far, so normal and reassuring. I always add water to prevent sticking. Bramleys can get very fluffy when cooking, and so can burn on the bottom quite quickly. I've seen on YouTube people advising to cook apples for this reason, before canning. As they expand, I can only imagine the erupting results. Next is special tools. There's a lid magnet, which is not essential, a debubbler and headspace measure, not essential either. And there's a jar lifter, which I think is essential. The trivet, although essential, you don't need to use bought ones. You can use a cloth or other lids to raise up the jars so they don't touch the heat source and are surrounded by water. I got a kit. It was cheaper than an individual jar lifter at that time off Amazon, but check that. We cut the trivet as it was a touch too big for our pan, so check your dimensions carefully too. The pan can be any pan bigger than your actual jars, so you could try 4 small olive jars, for example, in a regular pan you have, as long as the water covers them on your version of a trivet in the pan. My pan was a gift and was bought when Wilko's was shutting down on discount. It made me laugh though, as the reviews said, too thin, burns everything, only good for boiling water. I thought, perfect. Was supposed to be a negative review. Stirring frequently, you gradually get a puree. Now the apples are cooked down, I want to remove the skins, pips and bits. I already own a food mill, so I will pass it through it. I find it easier and quicker than prepping the fruit. To avoid this step altogether, when you prep the fruit, peel, core and then chop before cooking. Thus you no longer need this piece of kit. If you're going to invest, I use it for lots and lots of recipes and tasks, make sure you get a decent one, otherwise it'll be a buy cheap, buy twice exercise. Mine's an OXO and was about £40, a bit of a splurge, but it's so much better than a cheap one that I now regret buying. Now in with the lemon juice. According to the recipes, 4 tablespoons for 5 kilograms of fruit. Here in the UK, canning jars with 2-part lids are what I would consider expensive, and unlike America, I have never seen any whilst thrifting, only a few flip-top bottles and jars. Therefore I'm going to go for lug lid jars that have been saved from food we have eaten, like pasta sauces and so on. I've made sure I've chosen ones with button lids that pop up and down to give me reassurance of a seal later on. I made sure none of them had been forcefully opened, so I can be relatively sure that they are not damaged and will seal. So these I consider free. Friends and family will happily save them for you, and Facebook often seems to have posts offering free jars. Now it's time to heat up my jars, so I might as well use the water I'll be canning in later, a mixture of warm and then hot to hopefully prevent shattering. Most advice is hot jar, hot product, hot water, or cold jar, cold product, cold water, but I would have thought that takes longer, so I could probably use more electricity. Okay, 8 cloths. Ones I already made from old towels and I use for everything, wiping up, dishcloth, picking up hot things, and now canning cloths. So let's get these jars filled with apple puree. My stainless steel jug, I've had this jug for years and it's been used so much for jamming and now canning, but a cup or a mug would do the same job, even though I really like my jug. Number 10 is a funnel. I would say this was the second most important piece. It saves so much mess. Although you could manage without it, the mess it would create means I would say it was well worth it. Finally, we have the lid magnet in use. Nice to have as it gets the lid out and you don't get wet or burnt, but is not essential. I could have drained the water and been careful like I used to do when I was jamming. Now I use the magnet when I'm jamming too. Well, I've got it. Let's get the lids on nice and tight. The jar lifter is my number one essential bit of kit. You don't want to be getting near the boiling water, let alone putting your hand in it, which you would have to do to actually get out the jars out of the pan. When looking for one, I found that it was cheaper to get a set than a jar lifter alone, but that may have changed, so check that out if you want one. When I measure the headspace, I'm using a proper measure as it was in the kit, but a ruler is fine, and once you know your jars, you'll find out when the correct height is, and mine seems to be around the shoulder of the jar. So in the hot water they go, topping up with more hot water, already at 78 degrees C. Looking for boiling at 100 degrees C. Time to pop on the lid of the pan and check later. 84 degrees, then 90. Once up to 100 degrees C, it is 20 minutes processing time for the recipe I'm following. And for note, I was checking the temperature just to see how things were getting on. I'm quite sure once I get a bit more confident I won't be doing that anymore. After the 20 minutes, it says to leave in the pan for 5 minutes to cool slightly. I believe this is to stop siphoning, i.e. the product coming out of the jars via the pressure it's under. So it stops that. Then I use the jar lifter, our essential jar lifter. It's easy to use, if a bit nerve-wracking. Notice me gingerly removing each one. So here they are all, cooling away for 24 hours. But they all but one popped. That little button in the top went pop in about 2 hours, which was reassuring as I know to refrigerate that one and use it up quickly. So I'm pleased with that. The next job is to store in my old cupboard in the garage, which I think needs an update. I'll have to think on that one as a project. And if you're wondering what I did with the excess puree that was left over, that I didn't manage to can, that I had no room for this time, I made another apple sponge for tea. Yum! I enjoyed nervously this entry into canning and bottling. I hope you enjoyed it too. I have lots more videos on my channel that you could try out. Thanks for watching.